can you hear me okay?
Oh, I see what happened. 1 second here. Okay. Yeah, I can see you good. All right, man. We are live. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Rocket REI Live podcast. I have a very special guest. I'm pumped to interview today. He's a beast. He's out of Central Valley, California. And man, I've been watching your journey and it's been an absolute pleasure. It seems like you're on vacation all the time, but we'll get to that. But anyway, for people who don't know who you are, Jason, man, tell people a little bit about yourself, how you got into real estate, and what you're up to today.
Sure thing, man. I appreciate you having me on, Mike. I've been watching your journey as well since we met a couple years ago, and it's awesome to see the growth that you've had. So I'm glad that we had a chance to connect. For everybody that does not know me, my name's Jason Pritchard. Home base for me is Central California. I live and work out of the Fresno area, so most of our projects are here in Central Cal. I got started in the real estate field like late 2014, beginning of 15. Before that, I was in corporate America all through college. And after I graduated from college, I worked in sales and sales management. I did that for about 15 years. Became super burned out and just disenchanted with the whole, trying to climb the corporate ladder. I'd always been interested in real estate, even from a very young age. And I reached a point in my early 30s where, I felt like if I did not take the chance and just jump in and do it, I was never going to do it. So for me, that was end of 2014 was the start of like the self-education process. Our first project was early 2015, and we haven't looked back since, man. It's been a wild ride over the last 6+ years, but I wouldn't change anything if I could.
It's been fun to watch, man. So it sounds like you got a little bit of a later start than maybe some of the millennials today who are starting when they're 20s, mid-20s, whatever. So that had to have been a little bit scary from that comfortable corporate job to make that leap into real estate. So what kind of led you to deciding that real estate full-time was the right move?
It was just working in corporate America for so long and really I was just miserable, man. I really did not like what I was doing. And I went through basically a 7, almost 8-year cycle at the first company that I went with, where I just went all in. I tried my hardest to climb the corporate ladder. I thought I was just going to kind of work my way up into like that mid-level kind of executive position. And then that would have been like my career. And, I did not really believe wholeheartedly in what I was doing. I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. And I thought it was the company. So I switched to another company and I went through the same cycle in 6 or 7 years at the second place. And I just found myself looking around in my early 30s, I was sad, I was angry, I was depressed. I knew that I had the potential to do more, and I could look around and kind of see my future. I would look at some of my coworkers that had been there longer than me, and I knew I was smart enough to figure out that if I didn't make a change, that was, I could see what I was going to end up doing, later on down the road. And it's interesting. I don't know why real estate. I know that I was always intrigued by real estate, especially at a young age. I can remember reading like Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was like 19 or 20, and like always being into kind of self-improvement, always like going back to real estate for one reason or another. I almost jumped in like in 2004, 5, 6 when the market started going crazy. I had a bunch of people that I knew that were in the real estate and the mortgage industry. And, I almost did it then, but I decided not to.
Thank God you didn't, man. You might not.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man. But I think to answer your question, I think it was just because I knew that for whatever reason, I knew that at that point in my life, if I had felt like if I had not made that decision then, I was never going to do it. And I give a lot of credit to my wife. She gave me a ton of support back then. She believed in me probably more than I did in my own ability back then myself. You know what I mean? And so she just said like, hey, we basically made an agreement that said you have a year to figure this out. And I didn't burn any bridges where I was at, right? And so, I left, but I knew that I could always go back to that company or a similar company if I needed to. And I said like, why not? Let's just give it a shot. And, we rolled the dice and it worked out. It wasn't easy. That was for sure. Those first couple of years were very difficult, but not a lot of trips like we're taking now at the beginning, man. Yeah, so it was a little bit different.
Yeah, man, I had to give you a hard time with that because every time I look up on my social media, you're on another beach, you're on another vacation. And I absolutely love it. And that's literally why I labeled this podcast Lifetime Cash Flow, because this is the lifestyle that you can create through this business, guys. It's not going to be easy. Like Jason said, like, this business is not easy, but it's very simple once you get the processes figured out. And a lot of people tuning in, Jason, by the way, they're maybe working a job. They're maybe trying to figure out, how the heck do I get out of this corporate world? And it's scary taking that leap of faith. So for people who might be in that position, for when you did that transition, you said you gave yourself a year. Was that year like you were working full time and still trying to do the real estate to get that off the ground? Or was that like you jumped in and went full into it?
We jumped in, and I feel like that was what I needed, because looking back and reflecting back, there was so much failure in that first year that I experienced. You know, I really worked like 10, almost 11 months straight, where I was working like learning the business, going, like setting my marketing up, going on appointments. And I was doing that full time, basically every single day. And I did that for almost a year without ever getting paid. And I feel like if I had stuck with my job, I would have convinced myself that real estate was not for me. You know what I mean? Because there was so much failure at the beginning. And I'm not suggesting that anybody follow that route. That's just what I needed. You know what I mean? And I think there's other people that can balance it, right? And I think so much of it goes back to your mindset, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. And I feel like that to me is more important than, you know, the information regarding real estate. You'll get the practice and the experience if you just do the work every single day. But so much of it for me was developing a mindset that allowed me to kind of break through all those failures that I had at the beginning to get to the point where, you know, we got some momentum and started getting things moving in the right direction, and you know, letting the business kind of grow and mature on its own.
Yeah, man, that unwavering faith has a lot to do with your confidence and your ability to stick with it. I mean, it's not every person is going to be able to just jump ship and fail for, you know, not say you failed, you were compounding your efforts to get to your first deal. And it took you a year, man. That's a lot of grit. And you wouldn't have done that had you not had the right mindset, the right mentality to keep pushing forward. And I can relate, because I took 6 months to get my first deal and it fell through. I had a contract, it fell through. And I'm like, man, this is just fuel to the fire to keep this thing going. But holy cow, like that's insane.
Yeah, and it's hard. And the mindset piece is so important, because we had at that time 2 very young children, and we had all the things that come along with that. We had the mortgage, we had 2 car payments. We were not very financially responsible at that time in our lives, frankly. So we were spending as much as we were making, trying to kind of keep up with the Joneses and do the things that you see a lot of people doing. It was very, very difficult for us to kind of wheel all of those bad habits in, or reel them in, and get to a point where, you know, we had to change our financial habits. We had to change, you know, basically everything, and get to a point where we could really focus on investing in the business, and then eventually investing in rental properties, and then getting to the point where we are now, where, you know, the business is successful, our rental portfolio is performing well, and now we're starting to kind of reap some of the fruits of, you know, all the labor we've been putting in over the last 6+ years.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, if you're out there, if you're pushing for your first deal, like, stick with it. It's a fact for many people. I'm sure, Jason, you can relate. Like, once you actually made that first deal happen, made some money, it may not have been rainbows. I'm guessing it probably wasn't, because you probably learned a lot on that deal. But like, wasn't that kind of an aha moment for you to see that one deal hit, and then to
it is
just know
100% it was, yes. And I feel like that proof of concept moment is so important, especially for people that are beginning, that you really have to get laser focused on doing your first deal, because you need proof for yourself and for whoever your spouse or whoever's supporting you, that this is a real thing, right? And I think until you get there, you know, your mind will start playing tricks on you, and it'll start telling you like, hey, this isn't really for you. This is only for people like Mike and Jason and guys that have been doing it for, you know, whatever. And I truly believe that there isn't anything special about me. I had no real estate experience at all, literally none. And so I didn't have the money to pay for coaching or mentorship or anything like that when I first started. So I just learned by like listening to podcasts and going on YouTube videos, networking with people. And I have always felt like if I could start from that point and get to where I'm at now, I believe that with anybody can do it as long as they're willing to put the work in. But you've got to get to that proof of concept first, because once you get there, there's still a lot of work left to go, but it gives you that affirmation that you need to say like, wow, this is real. Yes, I am capable of doing it. Now I need to go do another one. And it's a very, very important part of the process as that first deal.
Yeah, 100%, man. And by the way, like I'm right there with you. Like we're nothing special. It's like we just decided we're gonna do this, and we're out there doing it. And so another thing too, like a lot of people might be wondering is like, how do you get to consistently building this thing up? Like doing one deal was that hard, and now you said you have 18 projects going. So like that doesn't just happen like overnight. Like you've built up some systems and processes, and it's very impressive, honestly. Like I look at the spreadsheets and I'm like, dude, like you got this thing dialed in. So where does a person start when starting to implement some of those things? Like, are there people you've watched? And you said podcasts, but like, no, not reinventing the wheel necessarily, or are you?
So no, I don't think the information is out there. And that's what, going back to the point that I'm making, if I could start with zero real estate experience and basically learn this business by listening to podcasts, going on Bigger Pockets, and then just talking to people, like there's no secret, right? And that's why, to emphasize the point that we were just talking about, I really genuinely feel anybody can do it if they put the work in. To your second question about how do you create consistency, especially at the beginning after you get that first deal under your belt, I think the issue with the information being so accessible is that there's almost too much information. And I think in real estate, especially for new people and new investors, it's so easy to get shiny object syndrome. And one day you want to learn how to flip, and then the next day you want to learn how to wholesale, and the next day you want to learn about creative finance, and then how do we go raise the money? Then how do I analyze these rehab budgets? Let me go interview contractors. Let me go to a meetup. Let me go do this and that. And I think for me, the advice that I would give is look at real estate investing as a linear process, meaning that there are steps that you have to do before you can really get a consistent and predictable business. And step one for me has always been getting your marketing set up and getting consistent lead flow coming in. Because if you don't have marketing going, you're not going to have leads coming in. And if you don't have leads coming in, you don't have a business. And I think one of the biggest things that helped me, because of my corporate background, I understood how a sales process worked. I understood what a sales funnel was. I understood what it was to have leads come into the top of that sales funnel, call those leads, qualify those leads for motivation, go on an appointment, and then convert them. And so for me, once I understood that real estate is basically, this is the same thing I've been doing for 15 years. We're just talking a little bit of a different language. All of my old instincts kicked in, and that 15 plus years of work experience, I feel like I did have an advantage, because if you don't have sales experience, sales is like, salespeople get a bad rap, and I understand why, but like in order to be a really good, true sales professional, you have to be really, really good in order to operate, I think, the levels of businesses that we are in above. Right? And so I think there is a big learning curve for people that don't come from a sales background to understand, like, hey, you're going to have to talk to a lot of people, and you're going to deal with a lot of rejection. You're going to deal with a lot of no's, and that's okay. That's normal. You know what I mean? It's okay. And you can't get dejected when 100 people tell you no, because that 101st person could be the one that is going to say yes. And so you've got to just keep staying persistent and consistent with your follow-up and all of the things that we know that are important when it comes to converting sales. And so I think that step is really, really crucial. You've got to get that dialed in. However your marketing is set up and wherever your leads are coming from, if you don't get that going and have consistent lead flow coming in, and then you put in the work of like following up with the sellers and actually closing deals, and then you're going to be very sporadic. And so you've got to control your deal flow, and you've got to do it that way first, I feel like.
Yeah, guys. So like he said, it's like a sales and marketing machine. Like this business is literally a marketing business, and we just happen to be in the real estate industry. Mm-hmm. So if you can hone those skills, like you're going to be unstoppable, which is honestly why you've had so much success, Chase, is because you're really good at the sales piece. And obviously many other things and aspects to do with that. But man, like you're California, right? So
correct.
Isn't that like just the most competitive market, and like there's no deals out there to be had, or like how do you do I've tried to eliminate the word competition from my vocabulary. I think there is a lot of people out here trying to break into the market. I think especially now real estate the market is as frothy as I've ever seen it. And so that's always going to attract new investors. The thought process I take, Michael, is
I feel like I try to approach everything from a standpoint and a mindset of abundance. And I feel like if you can get good at getting in front of the people that are going to be motivated to sell at a discount for whatever reason, and we know there's like 8 to 10 circumstances that we see over and over and over and over again, right? So you've got to first, if you're a new investor, understand the profile of the seller that you want to deal with, right? And understand what those 8 to 10 circumstances are, right? It's inheriting unwanted property. It's a landlord that's downsizing his portfolio, a landlord with a problematic tenant, a seller that's going through financial issues, legal issues. The list goes on and on and on. If you can get good at engaging sellers like that, in my opinion, it doesn't matter whether the market's going up, down, sideways, you will always be able to do deals because you know how to get in front of those sellers, right? And I think for people like you and people like me and the people we surround ourselves with, that has clicked. And we understand that as long as we can just continuously stay in front of them, we're not necessarily competing against other people. I think as I've learned to collaborate with other investors, my business has actually grown. So I don't shy away from reaching out to people that are in my market. I try to give back as much as I can to the community here, the local community, and be a resource to people, not just, investors, but agents, anybody that's in real estate in Fresno. I want them to know me. I want them to know my business, and I want to be able to help them if there's a way that I can, because I know that if I can provide value to them, it will come back full circle to me some shape or form. It's just been proven to me that it works that way just over and over and over again.
True go-giver, man. I mean, it's a phenomenal way to look at things. It's collaboration over competition. I mean, it wins every single time. If you're helping people, guess who they're going to think of? Jason. Like it's true. It's honestly the law, like of reciprocity. You know what I mean?
And it doesn't. And I don't do it because I want somebody to give me something, right? And I know that's not what you're saying, but I want that to be clear for the people that are listening, right? That I had a hard time reconciling this thought process in my head because I think we're conditioned and trained from a young age that, if you're going to give something to somebody, you should be getting something back. And what's in it for me kind of mindset, right? And that's how I always was. And the community, at least locally here, was very close-minded. There wasn't a lot of collaboration. And I have been one of the people I feel like that spearheaded that go-giver mentality where it's like, listen, guys, like I just learned this stuff by listening to the Bigger Pocket podcast and a couple other, and Sean Terry and a couple other guys. Like if I can go just pick this stuff up, then there isn't really any secrets involved, right? So why not? Let's work together, because I feel like if we can work together, we're just going to get to where we want to go faster.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean, it shows time and time again, like it's even since I started this podcast. And by the way, anyone who listens to this, if you have a property in California that you're needing help with, like have questions on, I'm sure Jason would be more than happy. Same thing goes for me in Las Vegas or me from my Midwest markets. Like reach out. We love to help you get your first deal or help you work through something that might be a little bit unusual situation. So I appreciate even the referral you gave me the other day, Jason. I may be looking at buying a house in Fremont just from that. So it's amazing, man. And it always comes back. And that's not the expectation. Obviously, it's to help somebody break through and be more successful.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I feel it's an exponential effect. It's not like an addition where it's 1 + 1 = 2. I think when you collaborate with somebody else, you see the results exponentially on, your business, your ability to help other people. It just feels good. I feel good helping other people. And I've learned as like I do things that make me feel good, my business operates better. I'm better in my personal life. I'm better with my kids, with my wife. And so you lead with things like that versus like trying to squeeze every last dollar out of a deal or like, out negotiate somebody or whatever. I feel like, there's plenty of deals out there. You've just got to learn to work with other people and collaborate, and your business will grow for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been in the business for a while, and I mean, you see it over and over again. There's people who are going to cut people off and try to make an extra buck or whatever. And like, you'll never do business with them again. But if there's somebody on the alternative to like what you said, they're gonna bring you business over and over again because you did good business. Just like person.
Yeah, 100%. Your reputation. I have never been in a business where I feel like your reputation is more important than it is in real estate, and I feel like everybody thinks, at least in my market, that there's, it's a pretty good sized city that we're in. It's not huge, but the real estate community is a very small community. And especially the investor, like in the niche that I'm in the lane that I'm in, that's very, very small. And if you rub somebody the wrong way, or you do a bad deal, or you burn somebody on a deal, like it's going to get out very quickly. And it's just not the right way to do business. I think you've got to lead with, my reputation for me is golden, and I want it to stay that way. And I want everybody, that does business with me to feel good. Like, I want them to feel good after this is done. I want us to feel good. It's got to be a win-win for everybody. So yeah, your reputation is paramount, and make sure you do everything you can to protect it, especially if you're new and you're getting started. Don't be short-sighted and try to like shortchange anybody or cut people out of deals that should get a piece of it just because you want to make a few extra bucks. That's not the way to do it.
Yeah, 100%, man. And California is not necessarily the market that I think of when I think of rentals, but you've acquired quite a few rental properties. So at what point did you decide to start keeping some, or because I know you've transitioned to some Midwest territory as well. So can you talk to that as well?
That's a really good question. So the first kind of year, 18 months, I would say, was in the business. It was all just flipping properties, because I had convinced myself that flipping properties was the way for me to maximize every single deal that came through. I know that that's not necessarily the case now, but back then I was like, everything that came in, I was trying to make it work as a flip. And here is an example of how networking has been so powerful for me. I ended up connecting with a smaller group of investors that were all around my age at that time, which I was in my early 30s, like 34 at that time. So all of us were the same age, but the 5 or 6 guys that were in that group, they were more buy and hold focused investors versus flipping, right? And, I can just remember my mind kind of being blown a little bit at that time, because I thought so small back then. Some of the guys had 30, 40 rentals in their early 30s. And I was like, I can remember thinking back then, dude, it was like, if I ever get 30 rentals, I'm done. Like, I've never, like, I don't have to do anything. Like, I literally remember talking with my wife about that after meeting these guys. I was like, if we ever get 30 rentals, I'm never going to like do anything. We're just going to retire. And it's so funny how your thought process and your goals change over time. But being around those guys, they really encouraged me. We created, I guess a small mastermind group. We would get together Friday mornings at a coffee shop, and we would just talk. There wasn't like formal presentations or anything, but we would just kind of talk about what we got going on. And they would constantly push me to be like, hey, you should keep one of these things. And the very first rental I bought was a deal I was going to wholesale, and I was going to make like $3,500 on the assignment fee. And one of the guys from there was like, dude, after the meeting, he was like, let's go over there and look at the property. The seller had already moved out. She had given me the keys. I hadn't even closed escrow, and she had just turned the property over to me. So I was like, hey, let's go. Like, let's go walk it. And he was like, dude, if you do this, just do this. It's only going to cost you about 15 grand. Call these people to do all of those things, and you should keep this one as a rental. And that was May of 2016. And I don't know what about, it was really meeting those guys. That's what it was, because it showed me that it was possible. And they gave me the encouragement I needed and the accountability to say, like, dude, if you're going to do this, don't come back to these meetings saying you're going to buy rentals and then not do it. You know what I'm saying? And so you had the encouragement, the accountability, and just being 1 degree of separation from people that were actively doing it. And I transitioned the business away from flipping. And in years like 2, 3, and 4, and really the start of year 5, I ran kind of the flipping operation almost at a break even, dude, where, we paid for our marketing, we covered our overhead. I didn't pull any money out of the company at that time. And we took everything that we made and we invested it into rental properties. In those 3 years, we bought 50 doors, and all of those were here in California. And so, and that, I look back at that now, and I'm very, very, very grateful that I did that, because stuff that I was buying in 2016 that I was paying like $30,000 for in California, that stuff's selling for like $250,000 now. It's like, I can't even believe like what the prices are going for, at least in my market. And Fresno is a little bit different than some of the bigger markets. It's not like LA and the Bay where we're working with these astronomical numbers. But yeah, I mean, it was really just getting around people that opened my eyes to the possibility that yes, you can own rental properties at the age that I was at. It's not only possible, but here's how you do it. And I'm going to hold you accountable. If you're going to be part of our group, I'm going to make sure that you're successful like we are, right? And then it was up to me to do the work and put the work in. And we spent those 3 years basically just buying doors. And it's been a good ride, man. We're at like 70 something units, 71 units, I think now. So we've continued to add doors strategically as we've grown, and we've sold some stuff off and kind of tweak the portfolio a little bit, but we're in a really good place with it right now, I feel like.
70 some doors, man. That's very impressive. So guys, if you're getting value from this, please share this out there. This is fire. And by the way, drop where you're coming in from. I'd love to know. And man, like, pretty insane what you've been able to accomplish over here the last 3 years of building up that many rentals. And I honestly think, dude, like, this business can really kind of become a job if you don't be careful about flipping properties, because it's a high paying job if you let it be. And so that shift had to have been pretty big to allow you to get to the success where you're at now with all the rental properties, because it's like, how are you going to make the money if you're not flipping the property? That's the question that I have a hard time with, and I'm still kind of stuck in it. So if anything, I'm kind of asking for advice in that, because
Sure.
I'm flipping a lot of property. We're making good income, but at what point do I need to shift that? I mean, right now, but how do I get out of this hamster wheel, if you will, of flipping?
I think it starts with your intent. Everything, I feel like, starts internally with us. You have to make the decision first internally. I feel like you have to say, okay, that's what I did. In year one, I said, I'm buying 10 properties. I had no idea, 10 rental properties. That's what I said. And I still needed to flip in order to pay for those. So that means I probably had to do 20 or 30 projects in that year, which that was a lot for me back then, right? And so you have to make the decision first. If you don't make the decision and go all in with that decision, and I think it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. Then you've got to surround yourself with people that are going to hold you accountable to that decision. Then you can go back on my Facebook page, dude, to 2016 and 2017, and you can see in January of those years, I started posting, okay, my goal for this year, I think my first year was to get 10 and I got 9. And then my second year was to get 25, and I hit 25 right on the nose. I remember I closed the 25th rental property December like 24th or something like that, right before Christmas. Yeah. And then the second year was 50, dude. And it's amazing what happens when you start setting an intent. You put the goals out, you share the goals with the world to hold yourself accountable, and then you put the work in, and all your actions map up to the work that's required to get there. I think it's shown me that we're capable of doing so much more. Now I look back and I said, I wish I would have said 100. You know what I'm saying? Because I could have done it if I had said that. So I think you've got to make that mindset shift, and then you've got to just start with one. And I would suggest, especially for somebody like you that's already active in the business and finding deals, just cherry pick the best deal. And it's going to feel like you're money on the table, because our deals mean most profit on the flip or wholesale side, right? So you got to learn to delay gratification a little bit and say, you know what, I'm not going to make a $50,000 assignment fee or a $75K of profit on this flip. I'm going to cherry pick this one, because if you keep those really kind of deals with the biggest margin, you leave yourself a lot of room for error when you go to refinance or with a tenant or whatever, because you don't want to be like running a too thin of a deal. I think I've made that mistake where I tried to force and keep everything, and then I ended up putting, you want to do I've done BRRRR on almost all of my rentals, and BRRRR works out great when you're getting a $20,000 or $30,000 check back when you refinance it, but it's not as fun when you've got to write a $30,000 check. You know what I'm saying? And so you got to kind of navigate those things at the beginning to make sure you get to that. You've got to get to, like, I feel like 8 or 10 units as quick as possible, because if you get there and you do it right, where you're focused on making sure those things are cash flowing, you'll start seeing $2-3 grand in profit going into your business account every single month. And that account's going to start dialing itself up. And it's not as exciting when it's just one and it's $200. It's like, well, it's $200. It's like, whatever. But when it starts popping off $2-3 grand a month, you're like, okay, I could see this working. And then you start building momentum just like you do with anything else. And then it starts to become easier because you've done 8 or 10 of them. And so it all starts with one. You got to take that first step.
Yeah, man, that's great advice. And, we've bought rental properties. We've cherry picked a few like that. And I think for me, it was just seeing the process all the way through. Like you said, like, we funded it with somebody else's money. We rehabbed it, and then we refinanced with the bank, and we got a check literally for all of that we had put into it. Now we have a cash flow rental that we have zero money into, and now you just rinse and repeat. And that's how that's how guys like yourself can acquire 70 properties. It's like, okay, well, don't I need 20% down? Don't I need all these things? It's like, well, not really. Like, if you can buy it with cash and then put in the value to get it to a appraisable value that's going to be lendable, then you can get your cash back. And even if you do have to put in, it's somebody else paying off that asset for you.
100%. There's worse things that you can do than put 20 or 30 grand into a rental property. Like those rentals I'm talking about, if I were just to go buy them traditionally and put 25% down, I'd be putting 70,000 down, right? So I'm still getting really good deals. And what you just said goes back to the point of what we were talking about earlier on why learning how to generate and control deal flow is so important, because you cannot scale, at least the way that I did, unless I had my marketing and my lead gen set up and I had consistent deals coming in where I could cherry pick the best ones in the areas that I wanted that had the biggest margin. We could flip or wholesale the rest of them to pay for these. And, I think if you don't have that deal flow set up consistently, it's going to be hard. You're not going to be able to scale as fast as you want to scale.
Yeah, the momentum is key. And by the way, like once I quit my job, kind of back to your point earlier for when you went all in, once I quit my job, we had more projects lined up in the next 3 to 6 months than we knew what to do with. And we had stuff sitting. And it's like, that's just sometimes what you have to do is just decide, go all in for it and make it happen.
You can't, you're never going to know. That's the other thing I would tell most people, most new people I speak to that want to break in, they want to understand everything. They want to know every single step. And I think that's human nature and there's nothing wrong with that. But my opinion, that's not the right thought process to have going into a business. You're never going to know how everything is going to work out. You just have to look at people like Michael or people like myself, or start surrounding yourself with people that are close to you, maybe in your market, and say, okay, Jason did it. Jason is just a regular person. If Jason can do it, then anybody can do it, right? And so I know that I'm smart and capable. And that's exactly the thought process that I took, because after I sat down with those 5 or 6 buddies that I was talking about earlier, I was like, dude, these guys are just regular guys. I'm not taking anything away from them, but I know I'm as smart and capable as they are. And so there's no real reason at all that I can justify to say, well, if they can do it, this is what's holding me back. You know what I mean? And so I think you've got to just know step one is get your marketing and your leads coming in. That's it. If you focus on that, the other things will start taking care of itself. But you've got to get that, going. Otherwise you won't have a predictable business.
100%, man. And what I think is really cool about what you've built is how steady your deal flow is, along with how low your inventory, your overhead. But to me, you have a small team compared to some of these guys out here who have, 5 sales reps and, $60,000 of overhead every single month on the marketing side. That doesn't even count for anything else. So that's incredible. I mean, so here are the things that I test that. I would say about 50% of the deals that I'm getting are getting referred directly to me. I've invested a ton in positioning myself as a go-to resource in this market through putting on meetups, through doing the old school networking where we're going to lunch and coffee and doing those things, doing things like what we're doing right now, right? And people just know that if they come across one of these properties, and I'm not talking, I buy from wholesalers too, but I'm talking about people just bringing deals to me because like, hey, my dad or my mom or my family member or whatever wants to sell it. I saw what you're posting and, I think it'd be a good property for you, that type of stuff, right? So that helps to keep the overhead down. The other 50% comes from direct to seller marketing. So direct mail and texting and calling and all the stuff that everybody else is doing, right? But we just try to keep a lean operation. I'd say my overhead fluctuates. I'd say it's probably 16, 17,000 per month. And that's everything. That's my marketing. That's my payroll. That's all the subscriptions, all of the, all the marketing services, everything that you need in order to run and set up a business like this. So we try to keep things pretty lean. So then that way, if something happens, and I'm not worried about anything happening, but, I just never wanted to have one of those big operations. I tried to build out a team of agents and try to go kind of bigger where I had 6 or 7 people working with me. They were kind of my de facto acquisitions and dispositions team. We were growing that part of the business and it started to feel like work, frankly, dude. And it felt like I was starting to get some of the feeling that I had when I was working my old corporate jobs. And that to me was a big no-no. I was like, well, I got into this business to not feel this way. I can pick and choose what I get to do every day with my life. So why am I choosing to do something that makes me feel how I used to feel when I was in corporate America? And so, we spent some time over the last 18 months kind of revamping everything and moving towards
like a virtual model where, you know, it's just kind of lean and easy. And that's worked very well for me. And it's in line with my life, the type of life that I want to live. And that's a very, very big thing, right? I didn't want my life to revolve around my business. I wanted my business and the income that's generated from my business and my investments to propel the kind of life that I wanted to live. And that was a very, very crucial kind of mindset shift that I had to have, because I was building what I thought what other people's businesses were. I was like, okay, we've got to build the big sales team. We've got to do this. We've got to blah, blah, blah. And that, I don't want that. And I'm very clear about what I want, and what works for me is what works for me. You know what I mean? And so that's, you know, as I've doubled down on that and tripled down on that thought process, I found my businesses perform better. I just perform better as a person, and I'm happier, which is the most important thing.
100%, man. Couldn't have said it better. And by the way, like every person who watches this is going to have their own vision of what their company looks like. And if your company is 10 salespeople nationwide, you know, buying 100 houses a month with $100,000, $200,000 a month overhead, that's great. If you can make that profitable, fantastic. But what I found too is just from building it up and kind of learning the same thing you said, with having a little bit more overhead, more sales, is like, it can kind of get a little bit stressful, man. And like, at the end of the day, am I really going to net a whole lot more if I have 5 people with this much more overhead than if I just had 2 who were highly efficient? I don't know. Like, I've almost found better just to zone in and narrow my focus. And that's been pretty successful for us. But I think it's just up to the person. And you made some really good points with that.
Yeah. People need to have clarity about what they want to get out of this business, right? I think people are not very clear and specific about what they want getting into it. And then it leads to this indecisiveness about, well, what kind of business do I want? Social media, you know, is tough because it's such a powerful tool, because you can connect with so many people that, you know, you really be able to connect to before, you know, the implement of it. But it's also can be very distracting. It can be very difficult to look and see what all of like these big gurus, these guys that are doing. You're like, well, if they're doing it, then I guess I have to do that too. You know what I'm saying? And I have found that that's not really the case for me, right? And that just made me unhappy. And so I think you need to get really clear about what makes you happy. And like travel makes me and my wife happy. Like being able to have the freedom to do what I want, when I want, with the people that I want, that's what makes me happy, right? And creating income streams that allow me to have the time freedom to do what I want when I want to. That's what I didn't have when I was in corporate America. I hated like somebody else telling you've got to be here. You're in this cubicle for the next 10 hours. You can't get up. You've got to make this many calls. You've got to like blah, 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 blah. And I don't ever want to be in that position again. And so everything I'm doing now is to create the time freedom that I need in order to just kind of live the life that I want. And then you got to get clear about, what do I really want my dream life to look like? And I don't think most people really think about that. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, Jennifer and I didn't just decide like, okay, we're going to take all these trips. We've been very methodical about how we planned this out. And it started from 1 trip a year to 2 trips a year to 1 trip a quarter to now where we're at. And that didn't happen overnight either. We were very, very clear about where we wanted to go, how we were going to do it, how we were going to pay for it. All of these things, you know what I mean? It's not an accident that we just ended up and decided to do all of this stuff. There's been a lot of thought first and then planning to get to where we're at now.
Makes me so happy, man. I love seeing people win. I love seeing you on vacation. I just got off a podcast with Kyle Grimm, and he's going to be in Hawaii for 2 months out of the year. Like, it's a common trend that I see on these podcasts, man, of like people, they've just decided this is the lifestyle that I want to live. And it really does come down to making that decision and then flipping that mindset from the flipping to the wealth building, which is the rental properties. And so you don't just replace your passive income by flipping hundreds of houses. Ask me how I know. I still haven't got that passive income where I want it to be, but it's because I haven't fully switched. And right now I'm in the middle of doing that. I've decided, okay, passive income, that's the new motto for going forward. It's like, I know how to find the deals. Now it's a matter of switching that perspective. And you made some phenomenal points there. And I think it's amazing what you guys do on those trips. Cabo, right, is where you guys were recently?
Yeah, we were just in Cabo. We did, I'd always wanted to do an overwater bungalow. I'd never stayed at an overwater bungalow, so I turned 40 in May. So we were able to go there in June for 2 weeks, and that was probably the most amazing trip that we went, and we did first class everything, man. That was another shift. You know what I mean? Like, I think I didn't come from money, you know, like I had a good childhood growing up, but it was just a normal childhood. Right. And so it's hard when you start becoming successful financially, you know, like dealing with all of this old programming that we have about money and our own like self-worth and our own image about, like, is it okay for me to fly first class? Is it okay for me to stay at a nice resort? Right. When I grew up staying at like the Travel Lodge and like Motel 6 when we went on our vacations as a family. Right. And so, you know, it's all just a journey, man. And all of it is just a process. And, you know, this summer has been a season of us really kind of, you know, just enjoying some of the fruits because we worked so hard over the last 6 years. And I think you've got to learn to make it okay to reward yourself for all of this work, because there's been times where I've sat back and said, what the hell am I doing all this for? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I feel like I'm working twice as many hours as I used to work at my old job. Right. And I love what I do, but you know, we kind of go through those phases where it's like, why am I doing this? Or, you know, you have a bad day or a bad week or something happens and you start questioning what's going on. And I think it's really, really important to get clear about why you're doing it, what really truly makes you happy, and then investing in those experiences that make you happy. And that really helps kind of pull you through, you know, the roller coaster ride that this business can be, man, because it's fun when everything's going good, but there's going to be plenty of times when it goes the other way, and you've got to learn how to deal with that and break through that, because it's up to you. You know what I mean? You can't take all the credit when things are going great, but then not deal with the responsibility of things getting sideways either. And you've got to have the mindset in place in order to process all of that stuff.
Dude, entrepreneurship's a lonely world. It's like you're on an island by yourself most of the time, and you're going to have the ups and downs. And I think, like you said, it's so important, man, to reward yourself when you do have a successful sale. You know, obviously when you're getting started, you're not going to be going on vacation every time. But yeah, for us, like when I first got started, my first like 6 to 10 deals, like we were going out to dinner, like a nice dinner, and we were enjoying that. And the more we flipped and the more we do, it's like we'll do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a month, you know, and we forget to celebrate. It's like, wait, why are we doing this? Like, we just crushed it this month and we didn't even go, you know, enjoy ourselves. So I think it's important to kind of have that balance and remind yourself why. And speaking of which, man, like, I know you've probably talked about it a couple of times for freedom, but why do you do this? What's your biggest, what's success in you? Why?
Yeah. So it's a couple different things. I associate very strongly with being a provider for my family. It makes me feel very good to be able to provide the kind of life that I can provide now for my family. It makes me feel incredible. It's one of the best feelings that I've had. And I want to get to a point where, like me, I can be the person. I've heard like Ed Milet and other people talk about being the person that changes kind of the trajectory of your family tree, right? And, you know, your family tree has kind of grown a certain way, and then one person comes along and changes the opportunities for his family, the people that he's with now, and then future generations, right? And that, for whatever reason, really resonates with me. You know, I've looked into, I think like the goal financially, one of the big goals for me is kind of starting like a pseudo family office for my family, right? And so anybody that comes, either my kids or my grandkids, if they have an idea or they want to open a business or they're into the arts or dance or movies or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that family office setup can be what allows them to make decisions based on what makes them happy and what they're truly passionate about, versus like, I've got to show up every day at this job that I don't like because I need to make enough money to pay my mortgage and do these things. And then you end up in this cycle that just drives you crazy. And I feel like, you know, that's a goal that I can chase for the rest of my life. Right. I'm very, very interested in like unlocking my own personal potential. I know that I'm not operating anywhere close to what my full true potential is on this earth. And I feel like that's another goal, that as you grow, and you see this, man, like I thought when you got to 30 rentals, like my life was going to change. Nothing happened. I thought when you made $1 million, my life was going to change. Nothing happened. Right. Like I start surrounding myself, and it's tough because when you find success, all of the people that you've been around are like, dude, like you're crushing it. Like, and so you got to balance like being grateful for everything that you've done, but not being satisfied and realizing like, dude, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. Like I'm putting myself around people that are operating way up here, right? And that guys that have developed humongous real estate deals and that are doing $100 million projects and are doing like things that to me, like are scary to me right now, right? Because I'm constantly setting the bar higher, because you break through to another level and then you get above those clouds and you're like, wow. And then it's like, okay, there's a whole nother level that just, you know, that you've got to climb to next, man. And so it's just like this never ending thing. So I would say it's those things, and then the financial freedom. I think those are really the three big things that drive me every day. And when I get down, because I get down just like everybody else, dude, like when I'm in, you know, kind of in one of those moods, or, you know, I feel like my mindset drifting away from where I know it needs to be, you've got to have those things as placeholders or a GPS to remind you why you're doing all this stuff. Because if it's just about the money, you're not going to have longevity. I guarantee you that. If you're doing it just because of the money, this will wear off at some point, and it's too much of a roller coaster to just have it be about money. It's not, if it's just about the finances, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't think that that's a long-term goal that I can get behind. You know, that's just me, I guess.
No, dude, I agree with you 100%. And I bet you that why is what kept you pushing when you were on your way to that first deal in that first year. That, I mean, you had some struggles and didn't know, you know, if this is for me or not, right? But I bet you that why and that vision is what catapulted you through those hard times.
I've told this story before, but it's funny. And so I can remember my wife, you know, I mentioned how much she was supportive of me, but she also held me accountable. She wasn't afraid to hold me accountable. And I remember, like, we were like 9 months in, right? And she saw me working. So it wasn't like I was just sitting on the couch not doing anything, but like we're 9 months in, no money coming in. We're kind of creeping up on that annual deadline. And I remember having a conversation with her in our bedroom where she basically told me, she was like, listen, like, if you can't figure this out, you're going to have to go get a job at Walmart. And I don't care, because this isn't working. You know what I mean? And that, for me, like, being a man like me, dude, that's not an easy conversation to have from to hear that from my wife, right? And so it's like, there's little moments like that I can look back and remember, and we still joke about that. Like now, every once in a while, we'll bring that conversation up, and I can remember I was like, that was all the gas that I needed. Like, that was what I needed for like that last 3 months that I gave myself to kind of push through. And it's interesting, like, I feel like maybe 30 or 45 days after that, we popped off like 3 deals, like almost back to back to back. You know what I mean? And it's just funny, man. It's that you see that meme where the guy's digging for gold and, you know, one guy's turning back and the other guy's there, and you can see how close they both are to the gold, right? And I feel like that's the issue that most people struggle with. They don't realize, you know, it's not something where we're trading time for money. You have to learn how to produce a result in this business, and you do not get paid until you get good at producing that result. And that takes time, dude. It takes time at the beginning and patience, but if you stick with it, the result will happen. I feel like it's inevitable, but you just can't give up.
Yeah, dude, that's so funny, because I had the same experience with my wife. You know, it's like 6-7 months in, it's like, okay, like, you're spending money, you're doing all this stuff. How come we aren't making any money? It's like, just wait, you know, hold on, we'll get there. But love that, man. Love that.
Yeah.
The support is very, very powerful. So if you don't have a significant other, find a friend, find somebody else who has big dreams and goals, and make them hold you accountable. Like Jason said with his group of investors, it's like he put it out to the world that he's going to start buying rentals. Well, he better not let himself or these other guys down.
Yeah,
he's gonna make this happen.
Accountability is huge, and getting around people that are wired the way that you are huge, especially at the beginning, because I think people discount how much of an impact the people that you surround yourself with are having on you, right? And you hear, you know, Jim Rohn say it, and you hear this quote all the time: "You're the average of the 5 people," and I have found that to be 100% true.
Yeah,
you're the average of the 5 people that you're around. And if you take a really hard look around the 5 people that you spend the most, I guarantee you're all making about the same money. All of your interests are about the same thing. And that's what it was for me. Like, all my buddies and I made about the same amount of money. We're all right around 100 grand or right around that number. We all did fantasy football together. All of our families hung out together. Everybody did the same thing. And as soon as I kind of broke away from that friend group, and not in a negative way, but just in more of just like, hey, I'm looking to do more and to be around people that want to do more. As soon as that happened, things started changing for me. And I can't stress how big networking has played a positive impact in my journey and in my business. And so I would say for people that are struggling, especially early on, go to networking events, go to meetups, go to real estate events. Even if you got to pay for it, get around people that are doing the things that you want to do, because just collectively that momentum that you have will lift everybody up. And that's a very, very important thing.
Love that, man. And honestly, like, I love being in a network with guys like yourself, Jason. And I'm the same way. Like, I had a goal to do 100 deals this year. And I'm in a mastermind right now where one of the godfathers of real estate, you probably know who it is, Kent Clothier.
Yeah. Yep. I know Kent.
Dude, the guy's doing 150 deals a month.
I believe it. Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, there are so many levels to this, and putting yourself in the room with the right people to change your belief system is so powerful. And I can tell it's been a huge factor in your success is the self-development. And so one question I always like to understand is, I heard you say Rich Dad Poor Dad, or maybe that was another podcast.
Yeah. Rich Dad was one of the books that really turned me on to the idea of real estate investing and buying assets that pay you, right? Versus buying stuff that, depreciating assets like whatever, cars and clothes and stuff like that. And so that was a big book for me.
100%. Any other books you'd recommend for listeners?
I spend way more time and effort and energy focused on my own personal development than I do like trying to understand the fundamentals of a real estate deal. Now, if I want to break through real estate wise, I really tap into my network first, and I go either establish a relationship or I tap into a relationship with somebody that I already know that is doing what I want to do. And I try to figure out how do I provide value to that person first before I go ask them about real estate development. And that's different things. Usually it's me bringing a deal or a money-making opportunity to them, right? And it's a way for them to make money, and they see how Jason performs. And so then they can kind of get a taste of how I run and operate my business, and then go from there. As far as books, I spend way more time focused on mindset. That's everything for me comes back to mindset. I spend more time on that than anything else. The best books that I've read for mindset are a lot of the popular ones. Think and Grow Rich, The Science of Getting Rich have been very powerful for me. There's a couple books by, his name is Dr. Joseph Pratt. One of them is Hyper Success, and another one is called The Code to Joy. And it's really working on reprogramming your subconscious mind. And I don't really think that people understand how powerful our subconscious mind is, and the thought processes and the belief systems that we have. I think people need to realize that they're not things that we like developed on our own. It's stuff that we picked up from because our parents felt a certain way about money, or our teachers implanted a certain thought process, or just our friend group, right? And so we have these beliefs about finances and business and our ability to make money and all these things. And it was never a choice at the beginning. It was something that we picked up from our environment. And what I've learned is that you can change that. You can absolutely make a change to the way that your subconscious thought process works. And so all of the reading I do is learning how to do that, and how to how do I reprogram my subconscious and implant it with things that are propelling me closer to where I want to go, and not just running on autopilot, which I think unfortunately like 99% of people do. They're just kind of going through the day, and they don't realize that they're just on autopilot all day. They're not actively taking part in where they're supposed to be going, whether they realize it or not. And so I spend more time doing stuff like that than I do I love the real estate stuff I get just from working every day in a real estate business, right? So I get good at doing real estate because every day we're doing real estate. So I've got to spend my free time keeping my head screwed on straight.
That makes two of us, my friend. Real estate is the easy part in all this. It's the mindset and the belief system. And one thing I'm actually really thankful for is I did a real estate education course to get started. I spent the $20,000 and then the $25,000, invested all this money into the real estate course. But one thing they told me was the subconscious mind, the 80% is controlled by that subconscious. And that was probably the biggest mind shift ever, because once you can start to reaffirm positive things that you want to accomplish, your world changes. It's insane.
And I don't, it takes a very open mind to subscribe to that thought process, right? Especially at the beginning, because everything that we've been taught and conditioned to believe is, I feel like the opposite end of that spectrum, right? And people don't want to hear that they're not being successful because they don't believe that they can be successful internally. But deep down, I think that's a struggle that most people have. The reason why they can't break through is that their self-image is one where, they just genuinely deep down, they don't believe it. Talking about self-image, Psycho-Cybernetics is another really good book. I think that that talks about that, and realizing like we all have our own self-image of what we are, and here are the things that you can do to kind of create a positive self-image that gets you closer to where it is that you want to go. And so that's like, dude, like that stuff for me has been the game changer, because if you keep telling yourself like, oh, I want to do 100 deals, I want to do 100 deals, but deep down you like really don't believe it, and you don't believe that you can do it, then you're not going to get there. You're not going to do it, dude. Something will come up that will sabotage you from getting there. And you've got to fix that belief first. And that's why you've got to learn to operate from a place of faith and certainty, even when you don't know how exactly you're going to get there. You got to believe 100% in your ability to do it. And I say that all the time. That's how I operated at the beginning. We're doing this big motel conversion right now, me and a business partner. I don't know anything about converting a motel into long-term perm. I've never done that before, dude. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so, you know, I'm practicing what I preach even now with where I'm at in my business, because as I've broken through into these other things, I've said I want to get into larger development deals and I want to start doing these bigger projects. And I've never done that before with this project, but I know that I'm smart and capable enough, and I have the resources within my network if I need to tap into to figure out how to navigate there. But I don't know all the steps, you know what I mean? And so, you know, sometimes that can be a scary place, and you've got to learn to audit your thoughts and shut down those negative thoughts and those emotions when they come up, and replace them with positive ones that get you closer to where you want to go.
I bet you'll know a lot more about hotel conversions after this project.
The next call that we have, the next one of these that we have, dude, I guarantee you I will know a lot more than I do right now. And I'm just confident, dude. Like, it's easy to be confident in your own ability when you've shown that, okay, I can set a goal and I can achieve it. So for me now, I've got 6 years of proof to myself that, okay, when I set a goal and I want to buy 50 rentals in 3 years, and I've done it, and I've shared it publicly, and I've done it. And now it's very easy for me, because I've conditioned my mind to believe that when I set a goal that I'm going to achieve it. But at the beginning, it's really hard, dude. You know what I mean? And that's why you've got to really work on that. And it goes back to what we're talking about. Like, you can set there's key things that you can set up. You can get your deal flow set up in a way where your business will become predictable. You can make your network and create a support group around you, where when you're feeling down, you can go to the support group and they'll help hold you accountable, and they'll help lift you up when you need help, right? These are things that it's not a coincidence that people like you, me, and the people that we surround ourselves with, they say some variation of the same thing all the time, right? Like, everybody says the same thing that I'm saying right now. I didn't create all of this stuff on my own, dude. Like, I'm just really just copying other successful people and implementing it in my life. And so it proves the point that we were talking about earlier. If it works for other people, there's no reason why we can't take a page out of their playbook and apply it towards our lives. And that's all that I've done. It sounds like you've had a similar experience. And what I'm telling anybody that watches this or that's listening right now is you can 100% do the same thing that we're doing. The blueprint is already out there. You've just got to follow it. And working on your mindset will make it much easier to stay consistent, especially at the beginning, because you're going to deal with a lot of challenges. It's not going to be easy.
If there's anything you guys could take away, it's that right there. Honestly, believe it, achieve it, put it out to the world. Who cares what anybody thinks? You're the provider for your family. Don't worry about anyone else's opinion. You know you are in it for the right reason, man. And this has been awesome. Very grateful for this, Jason. So powerful. The listeners are going to love this. And so thank you again, my friend. And where can people learn more about you to get in your world?
I would say social media is probably the best way to connect with me. I try to stay active on my Facebook and my Instagram pages. Just put my name into either platform, Jason Pritchard, and it'll pop right up. Connect with me. I answer all my DMs. So if anybody messages me, I'll do my best to try to respond as timely as I can, considering the other things that I've got going on. But that's where I share all of the good, the bad, the ups and downs. And I really try to be authentic and open about what it is that I'm doing, right? And when we're winning and things are going good, like, I'm not going to be afraid to share that, because we worked too hard to get here. But when things aren't going the way that I want to, I'm pretty open about that too, man. Like, we're going to post a lot more wins than we do losses. Yeah, Larry and these other crazy things that have going on, right? So I'm not going to be posting up all these L's that I'm taking, because we're not taking a lot of losses, but it isn't like what you see on social media, right? And I want people to know and understand that if you just scroll on my Instagram page, it just looks like all we do is go on vacation and flip houses and live this crazy life. And it's definitely not that, but it's not something that I would trade at all. So please reach out to me. And if I can help and be a resource to your audience, man, I'd love to do it.
Beautiful, man. Absolutely give Jason a follow. I was giving him a hard time with the whole traveling thing. He really does put everything out there, the wins, the losses, and there's a lot of fun stuff to watch. I love every day. I'm excited to watch your Instagram story. So love what you're doing, dude. Keep crushing it. And next time we chat, hopefully it's to learn everything about a hotel conversion.
That's right.
But thanks for tuning in, guys. Until next time, we'll catch you later.
Thank you, guys.